So now we can exercise our free will, our free choice, and choose which verse from the 9th chapter we'd like to hear a purport from. Okay, 10 is a burning desire to hear a particular verse. 1 means you'd rather somebody else choose. 5 means you'll do it out of a sense of duty. 6 means you're a little motivated because you're trying to learn the chapter. 7, you want me to stop talking, and so you just raise your hand and offer what you think would be a good choice. Yes. Yogarish. Verse 2. I thought that was a little low, that microphone. Okay, verse 2. You ready? Yes. I'm opening my Bhagavad Gītā app. Self-contained Bhagavad Gītā in one app. Chapter 9, text number 2. It's a long purport. Are you ready for some very intense hearing? Yes. Okay. 60% said yes. The other 40%, you can go for a little walk outside. Raja Vidya Raja Kuyam Pavitram Midamuttamam Pratyaksha Vagamam Taramyam Susukam Kartamavyayam. Raja Vidya, the king of education. Raja Kuhyam, the king of confidential knowledge. Pavitram, the purest. Idam, this. Uttamam, transcendental. Pratyaksha, by direct experience. Avagamam, understood. Dharmyam, the principle of religion. Susukam, very happy. Kartum, to execute. Avyayam, everlasting. This knowledge is the king of education. The most secret of all secrets, it is the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. This chapter of Bhagavad Gītā is called the King of Education. Because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. Among the principal philosophers in India are Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Shandilya, and Vaishvanara. And finally there is Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body. And the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge. They are educated in external knowledge. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. Oops, I ran out of battery. I calls for water. Thank you very much. Yet the soul, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world in many huge universities, but there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. The Bhagavad Gītā, especially from the second chapter on, stresses the importance of the soul. In the very beginning, the Lord says that this body is perishable and that the soul is not perishable. Antavanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirina. That is a confidential part of knowledge, simply knowing that the spirit soul is different from this body and that its nature is immutable, indestructible, and eternal. But that gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body, and that when the body is finished or one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in a void and becomes impersonal. But actually, that is not the fact. How can the soul, which is so active within this body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active. And its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated here as constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of all knowledge. This knowledge is the purest form of all activities, as explained in Vedic literature. In the Padma Purana, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the results of sin after sin. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reactions. For instance, when the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree does not appear immediately to grow. It takes some time. It is first a small sprouting plant, then it assumes the form of a tree, then it flowers and bears fruit. And when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by persons who have sown the seed of the tree. Similarly, a man performs a sinful act, and like a seed, it takes time to fructify. There are different stages. The sinful action may have already stopped within the individual, but the results or the fruit of that sinful action are still to be enjoyed. There are sins which are still in the form of a seed, and there are others which are already fructified and are giving us fruit, which we're enjoying as distress and pain. As explained in the 28th verse of the 7th chapter, a person who has completely ended the reactions of all sinful activities and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kṛṣṇa. In other words, those who are actually engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are already freed from all reactions. This statement is confirmed in the Padma Purana. Aprarabdha palam papam kutam bicham palon mukham kamenaiva praliyeta Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stalk or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong, and it is called Pavitram Uttamam, the purest, the purest. Uttama means transcendental. Tamas means this material world of darkness, and Uttam means that which is transcendental to material activities. Devotional activities are never to be considered material, although sometimes it appears that devotees are engaged just like ordinary men. One who can see and is familiar with devotional service will know that they are not material activities. They are all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in course of chanting without offenses, feels some transcendental pleasure and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. This is actually seen. Furthermore, if one engages not only in hearing, but in trying to broadcast the message of devotional activities as well, or if he engages himself in helping the missionary activities of Krishna consciousness, he gradually feels spiritual progress. This advancement in spiritual life does not depend on any kind of previous education or qualification. The method itself is so pure that by simply engaging in it, one becomes pure. In the Vedanta Sutra 3.2.26, this is also described in the following words. Prakashas cha karmanyabhyasa. Devotional service is so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. A practical example of this can be seen in the previous life of Narada, who in that life happened to be the son of a maidservant. He had no education, nor was he born into a high family, but when his mother was engaged in serving great devotees, Narada also became engaged. And sometimes, in the absence of his mother, he would serve the great devotees himself. Narada personally says, Utishtale pan anumudito dvajai sakritsma bunje tadapastakil bisha evam pravritasya vashuddha chetasas tadharma eva ruchi prajayate. In this verse from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 1.5.25, Narada describes his previous life to his disciple Vyasadeva. He says that while engaged as a boy servant for those purified devotees during the 4 months of their stay, he was intimately associating with them. Sometimes those sages left remnants of food on their dishes, and the boy who would wash their dishes wanted to taste the remnants. So he asked the great devotees for their permission, and when they gave it, Narada ate those remnants and consequently became freed from all sinful reactions. As he went on eating, he gradually became as pure-hearted as the sages. The great sages relished the taste of unceasing devotional service to the Lord by hearing and chanting, and Narada gradually developed the same taste. Narada says further, Tatranvaham Krishna Katha Pragayatam Anugrahena Shravanam Manohara Ta Shadhayame Nupadam Vashrinvata Priyashravasyanga Mahadbhavad Ruchi. By associating with the sages, Narada got the taste for hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, and he developed a great desire for devotional service. Therefore, as described in the Vedanta Sutra, Prakashas cha karmanyabhyasat. If one is engaged simply in the acts of devotional service, everything is revealed to him automatically and he can understand. This is called pratyaksha, directly perceived. This is too nice, isn't it? Should I stop? Okay. The word dharmya means the path of religion. Narada was actually a son of a maidservant. He had no opportunity to go to school. He was simply assisting his mother, and fortunately his mother rendered some service to the devotees. The child Narada also got the opportunity and simply by association achieved the highest goal of all religion. The highest goal of all religion is devotional service. As stated in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Adhoksaje. Religious people generally do not know that the highest perfection of religion is the attainment of devotional service, as we have already discussed in regard to the last verse of chapter 8, Vedeshu Yagyeshu Tapasu Chaiva. Generally, Vedic knowledge is required for self-realization, but here, although Narada never went to the school of the spiritual master and was not educated in the Vedic principles, he acquired the highest results of Vedic study. This process is so potent that even without performing the religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest platform. How is this possible? This is also confirmed in Vedic literature. Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who is in association with great acharyas, even if he is not educated or has never studied the Vedas, can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization. the process of devotional service is a very happy one, susukam. Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord, or can attend philosophical lectures on transcendental knowledge given by authorized acharyas. Simply by sitting, one can learn. Then one can eat the remnants of the food offered to God, nice, palatable dishes. In every state, devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service even in the most poverty-stricken condition. The Lord says, Patram pushpam palam toyam. He is ready to accept from the devotee any kind of offering, never mind what. Even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are all available in every part of the world, can be offered by any person, regardless of social position, and he will be accepted if offered with love. There are many instances in history, simply by tasting the tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, great sages like Sanat Kumara became great devotees. Therefore, the devotional process is very nice, and it can be executed in a happy mood. God accepts only the love with which things are offered to Him. It is said here that this devotional service is eternally existing. It is not as the Mayavadi philosophers claim. Although they sometimes take to so-called devotional service, their idea is that as long as they are not liberated, they will continue their devotional service. But at the end, when they become liberated, they will become one with God. Such temporary time-serving devotional service is not accepted as pure devotional service. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in serving the Supreme Lord. He does not try to become one with the Supreme Lord. As will be seen in Bhagavad Gītā, actual devotional service begins after liberation. After one is liberated, when one is situated in the Brahman position, Brahma Bhuta, one's devotional service begins. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. No one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by executing karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, or any other yoga independently. By these yogic methods, one may make a little progress toward bhakti yoga, but without coming to the stage of devotional service, one cannot understand what is the personality of Godhead. In the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, it is also confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Śrīmad Bhāgavatam or Bhagavad Gītā from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna or the science of God. Evang prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha. When one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt it. Bravo, bravissimo. Are we, did Shraddha pass out cards? Index cards? We have a system. We have a system in Jagannath Puri. It was really nice. We pass out index cards. You write your most cherished realizations on them, and near the end of the evening class, then and put your name on it, and we'll read them. Or we'll give them back to you, and you'll read them. Maybe we need to get some new cards. So now we have an opportunity, if you would like to note any of the points that were made in the purport, we'll give you the microphone and you can reflect back what you heard. Or if you have a question that you think is relevant and could expand the conversation on this verse, then feel free to ask. Tulsi.
Hare Krishna Gurudev. So earlier in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that Narada Muni in his previous life asked permission before taking the remnants of the sages. So what is the significance of him asking for permission before doing that? And would there have been consequences if he hadn't done that?
It's from this pastime is Prabhupada in this context mentions it as the etiquette. However, we find that in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, there are times when devotees transgress the etiquette. For instance, when cleaning the Gudicha temple, a Bengali Vaishnava who was extra enthusiastic arranged to pour water on the Lord's lotus feet and then take the water. And Mahaprabhu became externally angry. And he told Sarup Damodar, this is your Bengali Vaishnava. And he ejected him from the temple. But in that context, the indication was that Mahaprabhu was internally pleased, externally he showed the etiquette that in the temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should not have one's feet washed and honored by others. There are other ways in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had feigned anger externally and is explained to have been satisfied internally. So the consequences may be some external expression by the person who you've stolen the remnants from, but they're not permanent or severe, won't hinder your progress. But the etiquette is there from Narada, so it's nice to ask. But if you don't, you're not going to hell. Okay, let's see if you have any more reflections or questions. Yes, Ananga. We'll pass the mic straight back to about 10 o'clock. And we're passing out cards now. The cards are so you can write your reflections. You don't have to do it all tonight, but anytime you would like to write something down, and it's not just from the class, it's from any of your experiences here in the Dham. Whatever you see, feel, hear, you can put it down. One of the reasons we started doing this is because in the yatras, typically we've tried at the end to have everyone share their overall reflections and impressions of the yatra. But then we got on these marathons trying to finish. In the youth yatra, we had a small number of devotees, but each one wanted to give a Bhagavatam class. And I think we ended up spending 5 hours for 30 devotees. That was a couple of years ago. And then last year it was still a push. So what we're doing is parsing it out over the time that we're all here. And the result was really nice down in Puri, wasn't it? Those who were there, it was fantastic. It was the best part of the yatra, actually, hearing the individual reflections and realizations. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, yes. Thank you for reading this verse, very assuring and hope-giving.
It's amazing, right?
Yes. One question I had was, here in the purport it said, one who engages in devotional service, all sinful reactions, whether in the fructified stage or in the seed form, and it says in the stalk, they all gradually vanish. So how do we understand that? Like, because we do see devotees suffering sometimes. I remember you touched on this point in Jagannath Puri when you said that some sufferings are given to increase our surrender to Krishna. But
that's right.
So, how do
suffering is good. It's very purifying. I mean, I hate to bring up the thing, but if you've ever vomited before, anyone? It feels horrible beforehand. Afterwards, you're like, yeah, I feel great. And there's a way in which, due to build-up of sinful reactions, there's some trauma, there's some event in one's life where we suffer, and then afterwards it's purifying. Even those who suffer hellish conditions because of sinful activities, they get purified. There's no way in which there's any arrangement here in this world where there's some punitive punishment out of spite, but it's meant to bring one to one's highest potential. Having said that, so your question actually was how to understand. Yeah, so, just for scriptural evidence, we can look at a Jamil. A Jamil, that very question was asked, or a very similar question is asked in the section of a Jamil, because there's a way in which a Jamil, even though he said Narayan helplessly, there's a way that, and he was saying Narayan before that because he named the son Narayan. So then the question comes, yeah, but he went on with sinful activities in his life even up until he wasn't, which was near the end, after he heard the conversation between the Yamadus and the Vishnudus, and he had a full reckoning. And so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives an answer in that section by saying that, okay, yes, it appeared that he was performing sinful activities, but they had no effect. And he gives the example of a snake with no teeth. And you find those, you might even find them tomorrow when we're on parikrama around Govardhan Hill, because there's people who make their living by putting a cobra in a little basket, and then they'll come up to you and you go, and some people put money in the basket, and some people freak out and run away. But the snake doesn't have any teeth inside the basket because he's been detoothed. And similarly, when one has been purified of sinful reactions, although sometimes it appears that he's going on, that's one instance. The other is what you referred to, that we discussed. In fact, I'm going to read it because I alluded to it several times, but now I'm going to read it to you out loud. If you would give me 10:14:8 from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, I'll read you the verse and purport. And to get started while he's finding it, the verse is Tate nukampam susamikshamano punjana evatma kritam vipakam hridvagva purvir viridam namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadayapak. 10:14:8. And this famous verse, spoken by Brahma, is quoted by great acharyas, and in and of itself it's extremely powerful directive for everyone. Translation: My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, are surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. Are you ready? Yes. This will require fierce hearing, and if you hear this ultra attentively, it will improve your life forever from this very point. Ready? Srila Sridhar Swami explains in his commentary that just as a legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God. The word samikshamana indicates that a devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gītā that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. However, because in his mind a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. The purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord. And therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. Although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead. A sincere devotee earnestly desires to go back to the Lord's abode. Therefore, he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering respects and obeisances to the Lord with his heart, words, and body. Such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardship a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God, as indicated here by the words daya bhak. Just as one cannot approach the sun without becoming fire, one cannot approach the Supreme Pure, Lord Krishna, without undergoing a rigid purificatory process, which may appear like suffering, but which is, in fact, a curative treatment administered by the personal hand of the Lord. Does that satisfy you? Okay. It's a masterful commentary, the purport, masterful. Imho. More reflections, questions? Yes. Harinath Krishna Prabhu.
Maharaj, this question is in relationship to pure devotional service and the states leading up to it. Here it states in the purport that we're reading, actual devotional service continues even after liberation. We were discussing this briefly yesterday, and this is found in the purport of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 3:29-10. So before Mishra Bhakti or mixed devotional service, where Srila Prabhupada states, devotional service is in the modes of ignorance, passion, and goodness, and he goes on to state those different types, times the 9 limbs of devotional service. Then he goes on to say 3 multiplied by 9 equals 27, and when again multiplied by 3 it becomes 81. One has to transcend all such mixed materialistic devotional service in order to reach the standard of pure devotional service, as explained in the next verses. The specific question, Maharaj, is where's the second 3 coming? 3 times 9 and then 9 times 3 again to equal 81.
Well, I've read that purport many times, and my understanding of it is just, it's not an absolutely technical rendering to name very specific quantum results from, or specific combinations or permutations, but it's just indicating the way Prabhupada has in many other places, talking about the mixtures of the modes. And he does it by saying 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 9, etc. And then you get this multiplication of the various modes. And I don't know of any exact correlation to that particular idea, except for in the general sense that you can perform devotional service in a mixed way, or it can be purified, or completely pure. Yes.
Hare Krishna, my name is Sundarachal Das. I have a question on the other philosophers which were quoted in this purport, where some philosophers, are those philosophers, whatever they were teaching, is part of vidya or avidya?
Part of what?
Part of the knowledge or the nescience? The real is it whatever the philosophy that they have taught,
Yes.
the other philosophers, is it part of the real knowledge, practical knowledge, or is it part of avidya, which is nescience?
It's each one of the philosophies has a defect. There are philosophies, for instance, of karmakanda, and the idea behind karmakanda is there is no transcendent realm. There's only the realm we're in now, and it's fully dependent on karma. And there's the Vedas, the Vedic formulas. By performing the formulas for karmakanda, one can vastly improve one's material condition. But one has to continue doing that, otherwise one falls back down again. Therefore, they perpetually go on with trying to maintain that position. Then we have other philosophers like Kṛṣṇa, who opines that the combination of material elements is what creates everything, and each element has its own, it has an innate quality, and the combinations of these form the images we see here in the world. And they are, in general, atheistic philosophies. So they are part of nescience. Srila Vyasadeva then gives the perfect philosophy, and that gets expanded from the Vedanta Sutra into the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And those are the contending philosophies. And Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is the winning philosophy.
And the death of the knowledge, there is no dearth of the knowledge and the availability of the knowledge, like that Prabhupada quoted, right, Maharaj? So regarding that, the doubt that I had was, is it that one has to go through those philosophical speculation, one of life after life, before they get frustrated, and then they take up the real philosophy? And people are busily occupied, speculating, and there is no dearth of information for speculators, and there is no dearth of information for people who are real seekers. Is it like for both the categories of people? That's what Prabhupada mentioning?
Yes and yes. As far as there being varieties of philosophy to satisfy people's misuse of independence, that's borne out in the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in this section of Ajamil in the 6th canto. He describes how the holy name, which is the subject matter, is effective for everyone, but sometimes it takes longer for some devotees for it to fructify. And one of the reasons he gives is, put on your safety belt, because he says there are other people who are dedicated to other philosophies, and if everyone became readily and immediately successful by the process of bhakti and chanting the holy name of the Lord, it would discourage the other philosophers and the practitioners of those philosophies. Therefore, in some devotees, he delays the process even until they leave their body for it to be fully fructified and successful. So that's that part of it. And the other part is that you don't have to go through all the philosophies. You don't even have to go through Brahman realization, Paramatma realization. By chanting Hare Krishna, you can go directly to the perfection of life, as proved by Bhaktivinoda Thakur's last song in the Sharanagati, he explains how just by chanting Hare Krishna, he attains direct access to the spiritual world and his relationship with Krishna. And it's best if one doesn't waste time, because it's not absolutely necessary. If one meets a pure devotee and hears Bhagavad Gītā as it is, one can dispel the incorrect ideas that one has very, very quickly and take to devotional service. Although, as Prabhupada mentions in Klesho di Kartarastesham avyakta saktite sam, avyakta hi gatir dukam dehabad viravapyate, after Arjuna asked him, which is better, the personal or the impersonal? And Krishna says impersonal realization, or attempts to understand God from the impersonal perspective, are extremely troublesome. And Prabhupada comments in his purport that the effects of that exposure can last for some time. It takes a little while to repair one's psyche after being exposed to Mayavad philosophy. Although it didn't in the case of Sarvabhaumacharya, did it? Say no. No. Because after just 7 days of him expounding Mayavad philosophy to the young sannyasi, he thought he was going to elevate to a higher level of sannyas and get him on the right track by hearing Vedanta Sutra. And then after getting the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately surrendered and came to pure devotional service. We were there. We saw it with our own eyes the other day, right? We were just in Jagannath Puri. We were sitting in the same room where that happened. It's an advertisement for coming to Puri next time. Did that help?
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes.
Okay.
It
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was just focusing on this line in the purport, which says, such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardship, a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God. So I was just wondering, when we're going through challenges, how do we understand that we're just paying a small price? Because it just feels like it's the end of the world. And how long is it going for? So how do we understand that?
Well, we understand it when we do understand it. When we're going through the painful situation, it's hard to see. Chitraketu Maharaj was in a very painful situation. In fact, I can't imagine a more painful situation, and especially his reaction to it. Every time I read it, for the first time I read it, I was shocked by the circumstances, because he had wanted so much to have a little child, and then when finally, through some mystic potency of a sage, he was able to conceive, and then he had the child, and then it was murdered by envious co-wives. I mean, when he found out, Bhagavatam goes into detail. That's why Bhagavatam helps us to overcome all psychological anomalies that we have. And one of them is this acute suffering due to loss and other circumstances. So Chitraketu, we can look at the story of Chitraketu and see and watch him. And it's sort of a reflection back to us in our suffering. And because the Bhagavatam knows us so well, and when we hear the details of his suffering, there's this cognition that Bhagavatam knows me better than I know myself. It knows what I look like, knows what I feel like, knows what I'm going through, and becomes a guide for us, for very personally. Without going into the details of Chitraketu, he was physically distorted, and of course now I'm going into the details. He passed out of the pain of loss. And when he was revived, he again passed out. Because it was just, his attachment was so strong to this conception of having a son, and then it was obliterated. That is, the circumstance had changed so rapidly, which we call a disaster. Everything's always changing, but when it changes fast, then we call it a disaster. And he was so affected by it. And then we see the aftermath, that Narada and Angira came back and induced the child to come back into the body. And then they coached the soul that was there within that child's body and said, could you explain why you left your parents in your cosmic journey? They were attached to you and so forth. And the child said, no offense or anything, but I don't recognize these guys. I've had so many. That's a big departure from, I remember when my grandmother died, I went to a church in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and people there, the priest, I don't know what kind of church it was, but the priest said she's in a better place now. And I don't know if she was or not. But the Bhagavatam takes us through every little detail and says, here's exactly what happened to the soul. And Krishna does the same thing in the Bhagavad Gītā. And when we hear from Bhagavad Gītā, from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Krishna mentions how we come to a stage where externally we may be suffering. And this is my experience. I mentioned it the other day when my father died. I expected he would at some point, but I didn't know how I would react to it, even though I knew Dehino, smin, yathā, dehe. I could recite that verse. But I didn't know how I would feel about it. And as it turned out, and here was my realization was, if I cut myself, I'm going to bleed. And in the subtle body, when we suffer a loss of a loved one, then the heart bleeds and it has to heal. Subtle body. Same thing when I lost my mother, I realized the umbilical cord is not just a gross material thing, there's also a subtle umbilical cord to the mother. After all, if you get an A on your report card, who do you run home to show? And that's part of our internal workings, our ego, our false ego and everything is tied into mother, father, and so forth. And to all our attachments in the material world. There's an elaborate way in which we're connected to the world. And we have a construct of what it is and who we are with it. And the Bhagavatam very helpfully helps us to watch the scenario and then to, I hate to we use the word dissect, but to deconstruct it and say, how does it look now, and how does it look now? And here's what others went through, and here's what they experienced. And we can vicariously heal or experience what they've gone through and then experience their healing process and go through that. You were saying, how does one deal with it? That's one of the ways that we deal with it. And as far as administering compassionate care to others around us, it's important to recognize that we're bidimensional beings, because even though we're souls and we don't die, and nor do our loved ones, we still have a subtle and gross body. And there still is pain, although it's described, third canto of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, to be like a bad dream. But still there's suffering there, even though it's temporary. So we have to address both sides. If one goes through experiences loss, I've found that it's important not to coach people that don't grieve because you're not your body. Whereas I remember Mahamuni once said when he was sick and had the flu, and it was in the ashram, brahmachari ashram, and he groaned because he had a fever, and one of the new bhaktas said, "Prabhu, you're not your body." And Mahamuni, classic, he somehow or other gathered the strength to get up on his elbow and look out from his sleeping bag. He said, "Prabhu, you're not my body either." So there, dealing with both parts is important, and taking care of yourself mentally, physically. When you get really stressed, it's easy to stop eating properly or to eat junk, or to not go for a walk, or do the kind of things you need to do for yourself. So it's a holistic approach, and it's what we have to do to get through this life. We do have to heal our bodies and minds, but we also have to become spiritually realized. And even though I can say I felt some suffering on one side, at the same time there was a peacefulness within me, because I knew, well, he's not his body, I'm not either, it wasn't really my father, and my experience then grew, or my realization then grew to, oh, that was Krishna, it was just a mask, and he was expressing himself through that particular person. So it requires some deep consideration. And Sri Upanishad says, Vidyam cha yas, tad vedo vayam saha, avidyayam ratum tirtva vidyayam ratum ashnute. Only one who can learn the process of nascience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. Which means that we have to see how we're being affected by nascience. And side by side, we have to cultivate transcendental knowledge, because that's the situation we're in. That was quite a pontification, and I hope it wasn't an assault on your senses or mind, but that's what I've been thinking about that particular question. Do you have any thoughts or rejoinders? Okay. Thank you. And so one thing is psychological, all-pervasive psychological condition is that we have a sense of, most people have a sense of mistrust of that God really has our best interest in mind. It's hard to accept that when reversals come, that like, why me? And to have the perspective large enough to see that we're just passing through takes a lot of growth in coming to that point. So now I'd like to sing a song. And because it's Lord Nityananda's appearance day still, as far as I can tell, I'd like to sing a song I'd like to sing a couple songs. What kind of song would you like? Yeah, Borosukha. Especially after talking about everything we've been talking about. Page 78. And now we have a few minutes for some reflections and realizations from the day. Day, 2 days. Yes. Oh, good, you got a card. Okay. You deserve a microphone. You can stay right there and we'll bring it to you. We'll have it sent over.
Hi Krishna. My reflection is from today riding in the car. So today we rode in the car with a Brajavasi who narrated the story of Govardhan in his local Braj Bhasha, Braj language, and it was very sweet. And sweeter than the story was his prayer. When he prays, he prays to Radharani and he calls her Ladli, and he only desires to serve the dust of her lotus feet. And he said that he doesn't think he's qualified to take her darshan, so he just need to serve the dust of her feet. So I thought that was a really an elevated mood. And he also mentioned that he is really thankful to all of us who are visiting Brajadham, because he said that he thinks that this gives a lot of pleasure to Krishna, and he calls Krishna also Thakurji. So he said it gives a lot of pleasure, so he was thanking us for that. So that was really sweet.
Yes.
So yesterday on our way to Sri Govardhan Dham in the bus from airport, we were reading prayers of Akrura. And in that one of the verse, it said where Akrura is saying that since I'm so materialistic person, absorbed simply in sense gratification, I think it is as difficult for me to have gotten this opportunity to see Lord Uttama Shloka. So I could resonate that very well with me, like what qualification I have to come to the most exalted of all the dhams, Sri Vrindavan Dham, Sri Govardhan Dham. And I was feeling very grateful that it's just the mercy of the pure devotees like you, Maharaj, and senior devotees have been guiding that we were able to enter into this dham. And today's class was actually an eye-opener for me, where you said Lord Nityananda should remind us of two things, A-O, where we should actually cultivate our attitude of servant, because I personally tend to get a sense of entitlement many times. So again, reminding myself, servant, and second is following the order of your spiritual master, was following nothing else than the order of coming all the way from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to share Krishna consciousness to every person you meet. And one such example I wanted to share was of Malini Mataji. She was just sitting right in front of us in the airplane, in the flight. And whole throughout her journey, she was sharing all about Krishna consciousness with her neighbor passenger. He happened to be a diamond businessman. And all throughout 2 hours, and she convinced him to take Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So that's just amazing. And we all were slept. We were so tired. And Malini Mataji, she always has a mood. She was distributing to the air hostess. And the person himself said that she made me spiritual by the end of this journey. So we're so grateful
2-hour
to have.
flight, that's it. Right? That's good.
We're grateful. I'm really grateful. I'm very thankful to have her as our guidance in Sankirtan. So thank you. Just wanted to be.
Yes, Prabhu. Pass the mic all the way back to. We'll bring it to you. Special delivery.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. My name is Bandhan Datta. I came here with my family from Seattle, and I've just recently turned the switch on somehow for devotional service and just being a bhakt. While I was coming here, my Siksha Guru, I told him that I'm going to go to Govardhan and Puri. For Puri, he said, yeah, do whatever you feel like, but in Govardhan, when you go there, don't go looking at the city. Go with the intent in your heart that Krishna was there. And since last evening that I've put my foot down, like if I'm touching the ground, it feels really like Krishna is there. I open the door of the room that I have been given, and Govardhan Hill is right across, and I'm like, Krishna is non-different, as in Govardhan Hill is non-different to Krishna. That feeling of, and that advice is so like well-timed. If he did not give me that advice, I would have seen the city as the city is, oh, such a bad road, my back hurts, blah, blah, blah. And my wife is being very kind to me. She's like, oh, sit properly, sit this way, it won't hurt this way. And I'm like, no, this is Krishna's line, everything's going to be okay, in my head. So just wanted to share that with all of you. I saw her first.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, Hare Krishna everyone. I'm just sharing my realization from this morning's class also. Attitude of entitlement versus attitude of service. So I was thinking entitlement is a very me-centered attitude. It comes from material entanglement of the soul, and it's very unseemly for the soul. But the correct attitude is that of service, which is difficult to maintain in this material world. And there is always constant fluctuation between the two attitudes due to so many external factors in the material world. But pilgrimage like this, the potency of the dham, the potency of all the devotees, and Maharaj yourself, and all the pastimes of Krishna with all his eternal associates, as well as those of the Goswamis and so many of our acharyas in these places. This brings us back to the correct attitude of service. So we have that forward push, and we can maintain this momentum for a while, even when we go back and stay in this right attitude of service, give up the entitlement for a while at least.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So when I came to Vrindavan, I've always found Vrindavan to be a little stricter in devotional service, and it's my personal mood. Whereas when I go to Mayapur, I find it easier that the offenses are forgiven. It's easier to chant for me. And I've been to Tungavidya's Sakhi's village earlier, and it was a very nice experience 1.5 years ago. But this time, when we went there, after going through Puri and after going through that entire process of 7 days, it's like the pilgrimage of the heart. It's a process. It takes time. I felt much better. I felt that the dham was revealing itself. That we went to Barsana and we are followers of Radharani. And the dham was opening up to us. There were people, locals, who were coming in, joining the kirtan. They were so mesmerized. So I felt really good, and I can see that this is a process, and this process works. So thank you.
Kunya Shakti in the back.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the great Maharaj. Thank you for the great class. I think today was the best day of my life. Up to this point, Barshana is my favorite place since last year. There's just something so magical. It's almost like stepping into a different world there. And while we were out there, a couple of the Brijabasis asked me to come up and help them build their cow dung hut. And I did consider like my busmate. I didn't help, but I enjoyed conversation or laughter with them and them describing what that hut was for, just by pointing. But better than that was when Shraddha Devi, and I hope she really has the power to do this, awarded me eternal service to the arti trays on Lord Nityananda's day, and being able to serve Lord Balaram like that eternally.
Chaitanya Priya and company.
Hare Krishna, me and Chaitanya Priya made a reflection together earlier, and this is a few days back. So at the Jagannath temple, we saw a pole with Hanuman on all four sides, and Hanuman was on all four sides because he always wants to serve Rama in every opportunity he gets. So we thought we should be more like Hanuman by worshipping Krishna. And also seva will save you.
Vaikuntha Naik.
Bye.
Hare Krishna. So I want to share the realizations my daughter has written, Vishakha. So those who suffer will get purified. This is her realization. And I also wanted to share mine. We came to Vrindavan a couple of days back. So I thought we could do book distribution there. So I was doing books there. And after some 2 hours, I came out, and one devotee, I was in devotee clothes, and that devotee offered a book to me. And I thought, oh, but we are devotees, right? I felt like that kind of entitlement, like why is he wasting his time? You should try to reach out to new people. And he very innocently asked, oh, so we shouldn't give to devotees? Like that. And I felt immediately like the kind of, the sense of entitlement I had, like almost like, how dare he give it to me? I am already a devotee, and why is he wasting his time on me? That kind. And I begged for his forgiveness, and the next day, and he was gone. So the next day I again found him out, sought him where he was, and I begged for his forgiveness. And I realized that, am I really a devotee? Because this actually connected me to another incident that happened way back in Mayapur. In Mayapur, it was a Toto guy, the rickshawala. And I just happened to tell him that, okay, oh, you are so lucky, you are in Mayapur. And nonchalantly he said, oh, you think we are very lucky? Yes, of course you are very lucky, you are here in this place. So why don't we exchange our places? He said, and he said, give me your home in Mysore and you take my cottage in Mayapur. And I was shocked. I thought, am I really ready for this? Do I really mean this? Do I really mean what I'm saying, that you are so lucky, you are so this thing? I'm just doing some lip service. So am I really a devotee? I won't actually think of trading my place by giving my home in Mysore and get his cottage in Mayapur. So what exactly did I mean when I say I am a devotee? Right? So that's what I wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been a confluence today. It's the day we went to Varshana. It was also Lord Nityananda's appearance day. It's the first full day of our yatra. And in talking to some of the devotees who had just come from Puri, there's always a little bit of anxiety because by the end of our stay in Puri, the mood was so thick. They're like, can I get it back here? And that was just, we were talking about it in a way that it's what I mentioned this morning, it's preparation, you have to cook. And also, it's descending. It's not that we try to force our way in. We should be here and we could orient ourselves towards service. That's, I don't expect bliss here or any particular thing except I've come here for service. It's one of the processes of devotional service, and therefore I'm here to serve. And the more we serve the yatra, and the more we think in terms of how I can serve, then the more satisfied we are. And at the same time, it's natural that when we're hearing and chanting, and we're in the Dham, that amazing realizations, even if they seem minuscule, they'll come as a seed and they'll stay there in the heart. We're collecting those throughout our lives, and it's a very opportune moment while we're here to collect the rarest of experiences from the Dham and keep them. What I've seen so far is that many of those come or they come most readily when we're engaged in book distribution. There is something so amazing about that. Vrindavan's a little different as far as book distribution goes, just as far as the demographic and the way things are spread out and where we're going and so forth. But it'll come in other ways also. It's one day, and then tomorrow we start over. We got 5 days altogether, which is a good period of time for a yajna like this. So thank you very much, everyone, for giving your heart and soul to this process, the pilgrimage of the heart. And we're going to do it again tomorrow. And for that, we'll call upon Shraddha Devi Dasi to come on up here and tell us what we've won. Dear Sri Nityananda Prabhu, on your divine appearance day, if you so desire, please touch our hearts with the mood of a doshadarshi, not seeing faults in others, but only seeing their potential for advancing in devotional service. Please let us have the ultimate compassion on all souls, starting with ourselves, to take to the process of pure devotional service without delay. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part, please say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpataruscha kripasinabhi vachapatitana